Hi, I'm Gabe,
I'm Jaime.
I'm Randi.
and welcome back to NARAL's The Morning After podcast. So we have been gone for a couple weeks, and
It's been a little
Yeah.
busy.
a few things have happened since then.
Just a couple.
It'd be great if they were good things.
Yeah.
There's like one in there.
So
There's a few good things.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Jaime, what happened this week?
So this week we Kasich signed the budget, and
Yeah.
unfortunately there are still a lot of bad things kind of going with the trend of last budget cycle. They decided to sneak in at the last minute through the back door 2 restrictions on abortion clinics. So now we have further restrictions on the transfer agreements and variances that clinics have to get, which are completely medically unnecessary and have absolutely no bearing on patient safety, are just bureaucratic hoops to jump through for our clinic. So now a hospital has to be within 30 miles, even though it doesn't matter because you put a patient in an ambulance and the ambulance takes them wherever they need to go. And also says that the Department of Health has to rule on a variance application within 60 days. So that, and you would think, it sounds reasonable, right?
What's a variance?
So a variance, when a hospital can't get a transfer agreement, they can apply for a variance with the Department of Health. And that variance says, I have these 3 backup doctors who can provide emergency care if my patients need it.
So a variance is kind of like an exception to the established rule,
Yeah.
which in this situation is impossible to meet.
Yes.
For many providers.
Many of our
across the state.
providers, yes. And in fact, the only clinic in Cincinnati is open with a variance right now, and the only clinic in Dayton is currently going back and forth with the Department of Health on their variance application.
Okay.
So you think about this and you're like, 60 days. Well, I apply for something and yeah, the government should rule on it in 60 days. Sounds reasonable, right? Well, actually, when we heard about the Dayton clinic that we'll talk about in a little bit, that clinic had applied for their variance in 2012. So
2012.
Yeah, so they applied in 2012, and then you had to apply every year. So they've applied in 2012, they've applied in 2013, they applied in 2014.
What happened though to those applications?
They just sat with the Department of Health. The Department of Health never ruled on them. So when you talk about 60 days, you think that's reasonable. Well, this clinic waited more than 3 years and never heard back, and just finally heard back.
What was the clinic doing during those 3 years?
Legally operating, because under Ohio law, they're allowed to operate while the Department of Health is deciding on these things.
If they don't have a license though, does that jeopardize patient safety?
No.
What does the license actually do to make it a safer facility?
The license is just a piece of paper. These places are still inspected by the Department of Health for complaints and for annual inspections. They still apply.
And they pass their inspections?
They pass the inspections. They've done everything the Department of Health has asked of them. The Department of Health has just not ruled on this. So patient safety is never impacted because they're inspected, they're regulated. They just never get the piece of paper at the end of it that says, here's your license.
So this is just a square-shaped piece of red tape.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So now if the department doesn't rule on that in 60 days, it's automatically denied, and the clinic's license is automatically and immediately suspended.
So sorry, this is the variance request.
Yes.
It gets rejected if it sits for 60 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But they had been sitting
For years.
with no problem
Mhm.
for 3 years.
Yeah. So obviously this isn't a patient safety issue, because if the Department of Health really thought that this variance was required to make sure patients were safety, why are they sitting on these applications for 3 years? I mean, the Department of Health is making the argument that these don't really matter for anything because they sat on it for 3 years.
It's apparently okay that they sit for 3 years.
Exactly. So, that we have those 2 things in the budget, and the 30-mile thing is a direct attack on Toledo, because as we all know, we've talked about before, Toledo is open because of a transfer agreement with the University of Michigan Medical Center, which I know people in Columbus are probably not excited about, but hey, it's keeping the clinic open.
No.
So we can still hate their football, but love their medical center. And
Okay, I'll accept that.
okay. And so they have that transfer agreement. It fits all the requirements in current law. They actually sued the Department of Health because the Department of Health tried to deny it. And actually, that's one of the good things that we forgot when we put together our list of things to talk about. The court actually ruled last week that the transfer agreement requirements and all the things that went along with it that the Department of Health was using to close down the Toledo clinic were unconstitutional on a variety of reasons.
So this was the court in Toledo.
Yeah, the
Lucas County Common Pleas.
Yes,
Okay.
Judge Duhart and Lucas County Court of Common Pleas ruled that the clinic can stay open, that the Department of Health's closure order was unconstitutional because it placed an undue burden on the women trying to access abortion care, and because it also violates the state constitution because the regulations that they were using to close this clinic down were in the last state budget. And Ohio's constitution requires each bill that goes through the legislature to be a single subject. It's a single subject rule.
Right.
And so the judge ruled because these abortion restrictions were stuck into the state budget, which is about funding the state and has nothing to do with regulating abortion, or shouldn't have anything to do with regulating abortion. It was unconstitutional because it violated the single subject rule.
He was talking about the 2013 budget.
Yeah, the 2013 budget.
But they just did the same thing last week. Stuck
So,
some
yeah.
non-budget stuff into a budget bill.
So, the Republicans in our legislature who talk about being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars are wasting the taxpayer dollars, putting unconstitutional pieces into the state budget.
Yeah.
So, we won that case in Toledo. All of the lawyers, I actually got like 4 emails from different lawyers yesterday, like, where's the language? I need to look at that. So, the lawyers are definitely looking into, what we can do about these new restrictions. But what it could do is it could close, because we talked about Dayton and Cincinnati are only open because of variances. And Toledo is only open with this transfer agreement with the University of Michigan, which is 50 miles away, not 30 miles away.
Okay.
We could actually lose every clinic in the western half of the state because of those 2 things that were added into the budget.
Every clinic in the western half of the state?
Yeah, the last clinic in Toledo, Dayton, and Cincinnati could all close because of this.
Toledo, Dayton, and Cincinnati. What will the women in Toledo and Dayton and Cincinnati and all of the many, many towns of which that's where I'm from?
Yeah.
Cincinnati would be the largest metropolitan area in the United States without an abortion provider.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So all of those women would probably be headed out of state. Although Dayton might come to Columbus because it's probably.
But that's already happening, is it?
It
Going
is.
Out of state.
Yeah. I mean, the number of out-of-state abortions happening in the Detroit metro area because of the one clinic. They used to have 2 clinics in Toledo. One of the 2 closed. So even initial data out of, I think, 2013 or 2014 said that the number of out-of-state abortions happening in the Detroit metro area doubled.
Wow.
In that year, because women were already coming from northern Indiana and northern Ohio, northwest Ohio into Detroit to have abortion procedures. So yeah, the Toledo women will continue going into Detroit.
What would people in Dayton? I mean,
Dayton are probably coming to Columbus.
Yeah,
they're either going to Columbus or Indianapolis. Columbus is probably a little closer, so I would assume Dayton would come there. And Cincinnati's probably heading into Louisville.
So they're driving to Columbus for one day to.
Well, 2 days actually,
because they got to wait 24 hours.
Days.
Yeah. So Ohio law requires a woman to go to the clinic twice. So actually, in a lot of cases, what we're seeing, especially in like the Toledo area, is women are choosing to go out of state because Michigan doesn't make them go twice. So if a woman in Toledo decided to go to Cleveland to get an abortion, she would have to drive to Cleveland twice. If she goes to Detroit, she only has to drive to Detroit once. So it's actually better for that woman to drive,
if Michigan only tells people to come for one visit, why does Ohio require 2 visits?
It's a good question. Because we want to shame women.
Yeah.
The reason they always give is, well, she just needs to think about it a little bit longer. And it's very paternalistic. It's very like, well, I don't trust that you've really thought about this decision. So
if a woman is pregnant and she's at the point where she has physically stepped into an abortion clinic, don't you think she's thought about it? She's, she didn't just stumble in by accident.
No.
She's thought about it.
Yeah, she's thought about it. She's weighed her options. She's done research online.
Yeah.
She's talked to her family and her friends, and she's decided that this is the best decision for her. So Ohio, like many, many other states, actually some states have even longer waiting periods, 48, 72 hours. Ohio has decided that they need to come in and get a state-sponsored script. So the doctor doesn't even get to decide what he or she says to this woman in this consultation appointment. He or she is required to say certain things, give a fetal development booklet, do all these things with the woman, do the heartbeat test that was required in the last budget. Now they're forced to do.
What's the medical reasoning behind that?
There is no medical reasoning behind that. So right now in Ohio, if the doctor doesn't think a ultrasound is medically necessary, he or she still has to do the ultrasound to look for a heartbeat, even though there's no medical relevance to that at all. It's again another thing to shame the woman, and kind of push her towards making a decision.
Do doctors want to do this?
No. I mean, doctors want to do procedures that help them, and in a lot of cases, an ultrasound is part of that. But looking for the ultrasound and then reading a state-sponsored script on what the heartbeat detection means for the viability of a pregnancy and all these things are not medically relevant, but required by the state of Ohio to be done.
Not medically relevant seems to be kind of a theme.
The theme? Yes. None of these are medically relevant.
Because they're not doctors or scientists.
Yeah.
And so they make a lot of irrelevant and medically unnecessary legislation, like you said, to shame women, when in fact, I think, I forget what the exact number of days is. It's not, but from the time a woman finds out that she's pregnant, if she's going to get an abortion, I believe she's like made the appointment and in the clinic within like a week. So
that is if she can afford it.
If she can afford it, that's true. If you can afford it. But even then, I think that most women, they say you need more time, you need more time to think. But I think most women are in a position when you find out if you're pregnant, you're going to know within that 24 to 48 hour period, oh, I'm so excited, I'm definitely keeping this. Or maybe, this was an oops, but hey, we're good. We're still going to keep it, which I think is what most pregnancies are. Most people are not planned. Let's be serious about this. I wasn't planned. Most people are not planned.
You're Irish
it's
twins.
just a oopsie, but hey, we're good. We're going to keep it. Or hell no, like, I need to get an abortion. Like it doesn't take, and then you don't need extra time to be like, oh, well, you know what? They read me this script. Maybe I do need to change my mind. Well, no.
It goes along with a trend, which is this: women can't be trusted. Because we heard it in the 20-week ban. We heard it with the Down syndrome ban. Like this whole idea that these bills don't have criminal penalties for the woman, because the woman is just this pawn of the doctor who's being coerced into making this decision.
Evil
it just kind of goes along with that whole idea that women aren't smart enough and are not trustworthy enough to know what the best decision for them and their family is.
Exactly.
That really is the theme. If we can make it a little bit harder for them to get it because we've closed all the clinics in their state and their city, if we can make them wait another 24 hours, if we can show them that there's a heartbeat, or read her this deceptive script, or make her come back twice and wait 24 hours, or all these things just really push people. And it's interesting because the research then, because everybody's like, well, what happens to the abortion rate, or what happens to, all the women seeking abortion care? Are they not able to get it? And some aren't. But for the vast majority, they find a way. And that's what we're seeing with Michigan is, no, the woman can't get it in Northwest Ohio, but she's driving to Detroit, even if it means not paying her rent, or, not feeding the kid that she already has, because she knows this is the right decision for her. So, and that's what's really happening with all these, is it's shaming women and pushing them later, so we've got all these, and
does it matter if she gets an abortion later?
Well, yeah, it becomes slightly more risky. It's still safer than childbirth, but the risk of complications does increase as the pregnancy goes on. And it costs a lot more money.
Why?
This is a more complicated procedure at that point. So it can cost, a first trimester
So it's
abortion.
better for her.
Yeah, it's better for her to go earlier.
As soon as she knows.
Yes.
Yeah. Because then you can get the medical abortion where you just take the pills. And so it's like a really heavy period. Yeah.
So, her options decrease. The number of clinics she can go to decreases. The cost increases. So, we saw in that After Tiller movie, if you haven't seen it, you should really go watch it. I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix. This woman said, she'd actually come to the clinic like 3 times But every time, because it was a couple weeks later, the price had increased. So she didn't have the money at that point. So she'd come the first time and she was a couple $100 short. So she had to leave because she didn't have that couple of $100. She found that couple $100. She came back 3 weeks later and it was more expensive because she was further along and she had to find more money. So, this is what happens when we put these restrictions in place. We get Christina Hagan, state representative, talking about the 6-week ban and how the banning abortion at 6 weeks, just encouraging people to do it earlier. But then they put all these other things in place.
That was her quote, wasn't it? That women should seek abortions earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then they put all these hoops in her way and she can't access abortion earlier.
As if Christina Hagan really wants women to have any abortions.
No.
Exactly.
So that's what all of this really means. And, and it was interesting too, beyond the whole kind of big, larger picture, what it means out in the world, the politics of it all were also very interesting. We saw these backdoor last minute attacks on abortion access go into the budget. And then one of them actually came out for a minute.
Which one was that?
The 30-mile rule actually came out from the Senate version of the budget when the Senate passed it, because State Senator Sandra Williams actually made a deal saying, okay, fine, I'll bite the bullet on some of the bad stuff. If you do a couple of things I want, I'll be a Democratic vote for the budget.
She fell on her sword.
Yes. And she got the 30-mile thing out, and then she got a couple of other things she wanted.
You said it was out for a bit.
It was out for a hot minute. Of course, as soon as it came out, Ohio Right to Life and all their supporters had a big, huge fit. I think the quote from their president was, "We'll work like hell to get it back in again." And the state legislature again kowtowed to Ohio Right to Life. And
surprise.
Yeah, surprise. When the conference committee report came out, the 30-mile rule was back in again.
So, if she made a deal, what happened to the deal?
Well, the Republicans went back on it, and we encouraged her to go back on it too. Unfortunately, she did not. So she still voted for the budget with the 30-mile rule in it.
They went back on it, and she voted for the bill.
Yeah, she still voted for the bill, even though they went back on her deal.
Okay.
So, it was a good moment for a minute, and then it turned just
ugly.
As bad, really ugly, with them turning their back on the deal and screwing women over and screwing Senator Williams over, and then her kowtowing and still voting for the budget, which just really sucked.
That's really disappointing.
Yeah, it was really disappointing. So, everybody talks about how nobody likes how the sausage is made, and that's how the sausage was made this time. And
that's some ugly sausage.
It was really ugly, and all of it was really ugly. None of this is based in science. None of it's based in public polling. None of it's based in anything other than this is what one organization wants, and we've got people kowtowing to them no matter what.
Right.
And I only have to do what they want because they're in gerrymandered districts where it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I just need to do what the special interests want me to do, who are going to give me money to get reelected, and basically F everyone else.
Pretty much.
F.
Yes.
So
we're trying to keep it PG for the children.
So what else was in the budget?
So another thing that was in the budget that I thought had also gone out, or it possibly did for a little while and went back in.
It did, yeah.
Also, this did it. So the CPCs, Crisis Pregnancy Centers, and I don't know if we've talked. I think we have talked about them before on here, but really, really bad, terrible, awful places that make it seem that they are clinics, abortion clinics that women can go to get a procedure. And really, they just want to get you in there so that they can fill your head with lies and try to persuade you not to, follow through with a decision you already made.
These are crisis pregnancy centers that do this?
Yes.
Are these the ones with the billboards that I see?
Probably.
Okay, that's like scared pregnant. Call us.
Yeah, exactly.
Very strategically.
They call themselves women's health centers. They're all pink. They're like, oh, free ultrasound, free pregnancy test. And so, which they do give you those things, but they're not medically trained. Mm-hmm. They have no idea what they're doing. There's no medical staff there. They're just volunteers, pro-life volunteers who are there to make women feel bad. And so we actually did well, Jaime did research on the CPCs. And also there was recent research done on CPCs in California as well. And they just tell people really crazy stuff and they're not regulated and they just don't know what they're talking about. It's like, it's one thing, you know, you should be able to talk to someone about all of your options and about, you know, what's really going to happen, but that's not what they do. They're just there to, you know, persuade you to keep the baby.
And these were in the budget?
Yes, so they got $1 million over 2 years.
$1 million?
Yes, $1 million.
Yes.
Nothing you described sounds like it's worth $1 million.
I know, right? I mean, I wonder how much these people who work there are getting paid to work there. Because, yeah, nothing they do requires that much money.
I mean, nothing you described sounds like it's worth $100. Yeah. $1 million?
Yeah. $1 million.
Where'd the $1 million come from?
From the TANF. So that
What's TANF?
TANF is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. So
that's a program?
Yes.
What does it do?
So basically, if you and your family come into hard times, which a lot of people have in the recession, it gives you assistance for like food and just to help you pay your bills.
This sounds like a worthy thing.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And where does TANF money come from?
From the state.
Actually, the feds. But yes.
Federal. Okay.
So these are tax dollars.
Yeah, these are tax dollars.
$1 million.
Yes.
Taken away from needy families.
To go to CPCs. Yeah.
$1 million.
Exactly. Wow. And a CPC is not going to help you after, if you decide to keep the baby, they're not going to help you afterwards, you know, with any resources or help if, you know, you are persuaded to then, you know, parent your child. I mean, that's it. They're going to give you your little picture of your ultrasound, your free pregnancy test, maybe a pack of diapers.
And then you become a needy family.
Yeah. Exactly.
But they got the $1 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In the budget.
Signed by John
Kasich.
Exactly. Signed by John Kasich. Yeah.
That wasn't it either, was it?
No, that's not it. That's not
it.
enough. This was a terrible, terrible, terrible budget. If you read more, you should read more about it. There's been a ton of articles about everything that was put in the budget, stuff that stayed, stuff that was vetoed, and it's all just really bad. But another really bad thing, which we've also talked about here, is infant mortality in Ohio is terrible. I believe is it 46 or 47 for white women?
I think it's 46. Yeah,
46
for white women.
Yes, and we're last for African American babies.
Last,
out of all the states,
behind Mississippi.
Yes, can you believe that? How can you possibly be behind Mississippi? But anyway, you know, no offense, Mississippi.
You're better than us, so hey.
Exactly, you're better than us. Yeah, so they cut the family planning program for low-income women and men. And so this is something that would, you know, help new mothers bond with the baby, teach you certain, because I mean, it's a lot of stuff you don't know about babies. Yeah. Like for instance, babies should sleep. I remember it because I've heard the little commercial ABCs. Babies should sleep alone in their bed or
on their backs.
On their backs. Sorry, alone on their backs in the crib. ABC.
There you go.
Which, if you would have asked me, because I've never had a baby, I would have think on its back, like, wouldn't it choke?
That's exactly what people think, but no.
Yeah, but apparently no, that's not true. But if you never had a baby before and all of a sudden you have this baby, I mean, it's good to be able to get some parenting classes, and maybe I can't afford to go to Mommy and Me, but I need some help about how to take care of this new baby. So, and that's something that they provided, which we obviously desperately need here, but now we're not going to have it.
Well, and also safe spacing. I mean, if people don't have access to family planning, you're going to have one kid and then another kid, another kid, another kid, and that's just not safe. And it actually increases infant mortality. So, I mean, even worldwide, they identify family planning as one of the best ways to reduce infant mortality.
So what did the budget do for infant mortality?
Did it do anything?
It did. They actually put a couple of like data programs in. So like, we're going to collect some data and probably do nothing with
helpful.
it. And then, yeah, isn't it? Well, and also like
what does data do for a baby?
Well, and every time we, you know, because I read, it actually was a bill, Senate Bill 9.
Hey, baby, here's a spreadsheet.
Yeah. it was a bill before it got entered into the budget. And like when I read the bill, I was like, oh, data's a good thing. But like every time we start talking about, well, you know, who has infant mortality, it's low income women, it's minority women. And so we're going to track their birth outcomes, but we're not going to track other people's birth outcomes.
But it's still, what'd you say, just 46? You just still said 46 for. That's still terrible. Like they should be tracking everyone.
It sounds like we have the data. We're bad at it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the data.
Exactly. we don't need any more.
Yeah.
So
I'll give you that for free. We're bad at it.
Well, and they also actually talked about this before. They were initially, in addition to cutting the family planning program, going to cut the pregnancy coverage, so the prenatal care coverage. And they did actually put that back in the budget, which is a pretty amazing thing.
But putting it back in the budget was just leaving it at its current level.
Yeah, leaving it at current level.
So they didn't increase anything there.
No. So
somebody took it out. Kasich.
Yeah, Kasich took it out.
They put it back in at what it was before.
Yes.
So this is just no change.
Yeah. So
which
got us where we are.
Current level is really bad.
Yes.
Exactly.
So this was failure to move forward.
Yeah.
Exactly.
On infant mortality.
Yeah.
So there were, you know, a lot of talking about infant mortality and how we're going to fix it, and not a whole lot of action on that. Like
again,
the other day,
not pro-life. These are not pro-life programs. These are pro-birth. Which I'm like, I don't. Which when you think about that, it's like, why are you making, you know, the case for women to always, you know, keep the child, carry the pregnancy to full term, have the baby. But then you don't want to. I really don't understand that.
No,
I don't understand that logic of you have to have this baby and then that's it. We're not going to help you. I don't understand that. But that's probably because I'm not, you know, a heartless person who thinks that if you had this baby, you shouldn't have, you know, I'm not into slut shaming women saying, well, you should have just kept your legs closed. And now you have to deal with the consequences. And that is taking care of this child. And we're not going to help you because that's your fault. Like, what kind of logic is that for like babies and children?
Well, and that's what we heard with the pregnancy coverage and this family planning program coverage and the breast and cervical cancer program is that, well, they should have insurance because the ACA mandates that they have insurance. So they're breaking the law. So they don't deserve our help. And like, these are people under 200% of the poverty line.
Exactly.
So not making, I mean, 100% of the poverty line is still not enough to actually survive.
Yeah.
200% might be getting close enough to actually maybe pay your rent and do some things. But like, so, you know, these are people who are very, very poor. The ACA made things better, but it didn't make things perfect. There are still major issues with
It's not a
family.
magic wand.
Yeah, it was not a magic wand that just made it affordable for everybody. So these are probably still people who can't afford premiums, can't afford copays, can't afford these kinds of things. These programs filled in those gaps. They are not, you know, to be slashed because, well, they should be doing something better. Well, they need to pay rent. They need to pay for food for their kids. They need, you know, and these are people who are trying and they need help. So it's that attitude of, well, these people are poor. These people are sluts. These people aren't doing what we want them to do. So they deserve to be cut.
Were there any efforts by any members of the legislature to add infant mortality funding to actually increase? Did anybody try?
I think a lot of people tried. And I think there is, I mean, if I go back and look at where we ended up, I think there is a slight money increase for some of these programs. But I think Senator Tavares tried to add an amendment
Tavares of Columbus
tried to add some additional funding and programming in for those things because this has been
what happened when she tried to do that?
It, of course, got voted down like every other Democratic amendment that immediately got tabled.
Wait, this rings a bell. I thought I saw something about this where they had representatives from children's hospitals around the state that like got recognized on the floor, and then an hour later they voted down her amendment to help children.
I think it was actually, I think the Senate did. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't the same day, but it was all around the same time where they passed a resolution declaring infant mortality a crisis. And it was sponsored by Representative Nikki Antonio, one of our great friends out of Lakewood, Ohio. And we definitely need these kinds of declarations to kind of push policy forward. But, you know, we declare it a crisis in our state and then we do nothing about it. It doesn't really help much at all. So there's a lot of talk, not a whole lot of action on infant mortality on this, and actually some major program cuts that could actually make things worse. So,
okay. in the budget,
signed
by John Kasich.
So what happened when John Kasich signed that budget, Gabe?
Yeah. So, so we took some people. We've been talking about this budget since it was introduced in March, April,
March.
We've been watching the entire process move along. We've understood that the previous budget was bad. We knew that this budget was bad. We didn't exactly know in what form it would be bad, but everybody knows that this is the vehicle that all the stuff is, snuck in through the back door. So just as we saw 2 years ago, John Kasich signed the budget on June 30th. It has to be signed before July 1st. I think that's in the Constitution or it's in some state law.
By midnight, June 30th. Yes.
Right. So we knew he would be signing on June 30th. So we asked, some women and men from around the state, do you want to come to the State House? Do you want to be present when he signs this bill? We understood that, the bill signing takes place in the governor's office. That's not something that we would be invited to come into. But just to be present in the building, to show, and frankly, because he hadn't vetoed anything, there was still hope for a veto to ask, Governor Kasich, we are here. We would like you to veto these items. Women had been calling the State House for the week prior. What do we have? 800 people call.
Yeah, 800 plus, and that was just us. I know Planned Parenthood was also making calls, so they probably hit that same number or more as well.
Several thousand people sent emails to John Kasich and to legislators asking him. He's got a line item veto. He could remove any one of these without damaging the rest of the bill. We know he's not going to veto the whole budget, but he could pull out these terrible things. So women came to the State House the night of the signing. And I was really disappointed. I've been hanging around the State House since the late 90s. I worked there part-time in college. The Highway Patrol are the building security, and they're really great guys. I have a ton of respect for the Highway Patrol. And that's, when the first thing that happens is a Highway Patrol officer walks up and says, "Where's your permit for being here?" That is very disappointing. There's no permit for being in the State House. It's the people's house. How many, representatives and senators say that? To be asked, for folks standing in a hallway. This wasn't a rally.
Where's
this wasn't
your papers?
Where's your papers? Where's your permit? Why are you here?
Why are you gathering? You're not allowed to gather. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the First Amendment allows the
lobbyists sure as hell gather.
Yeah, exactly.
They gather anywhere they damn please in that building.
If we had all had the lobbyist badges, I'm sure we would have been perfectly fine. But
that's where we were. We were in Kasich's lobby. You're outside his office. You are in the lobby. That's where the term lobbyist comes from. These were citizens lobbying
their governor.
Their governor to get a veto. And so to be met, with questions of why are you here? When the House and the Senate are both meeting at the time. So,
the building is open.
The building has to be open when the legislature, where is your permit? And I've looked on the website for the State House. There's no permit.
No,
it
wasn't. Yeah, like you said, it wasn't a rally. It wasn't a
if
press
we had
conference.
A sound system and a podium. If we had a megaphone, if there was anybody chanting or making any noise, these were folks standing still, being quiet, waiting. There's no permit for that. That's not a thing.
No.
So to be asked for political purposes, why are you here? That was really disappointing. And I never expected for us to see Kasich. He snuck in just like these amendments through the back door of his office. Which was not surprising.
No.
And then out the back door. Apparently he didn't take any questions from reporters.
No. I mean, this is a guy who's about to run for president, and now we got he's not taking questions. He's not interacting with the public. I'm sorry, dude, but you're going to have to answer these questions at some point. You're going to have to answer if you're so proud of what you are doing,
then why
are you sneaking it in at the back door into the bill? And
no
why
transparency.
Are you sneaking in the back door to sign it and not answering any questions? If you've got the moral high ground like you claim to have when you do these things, why are you being so secretive and so quiet about it? It's just
budget after budget, no transparency. There was no opportunity to testify against these. The Department of Health, these are Department of Health regulations. They did not testify. They did not release, any sort of media statement. There was nothing. It's just silent. Everything's done, behind closed doors, in through the back door.
Yeah.
So this week we're giving John Kasich the walk of shame.
Yes.
For walking in through the back door, and sneaking out the way he came. That was shameful.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. So, yeah. But so the clinic stuff, we talked a little bit about the Dayton clinic already. Just to kind of bring everybody up to speed on all of that. So, after waiting since applying in 2012 for this license, for the variance application to be approved or denied, on Friday morning, they did actually receive a letter from the Department of Health denying their variance application, claiming it was because they had 2 doctors instead of 3 doctors, and they didn't feel that 2 doctors was enough coverage to provide 24/7.
2 doctors isn't enough?
To provide 24/7 coverage for emergency purposes. But
if I get a 24/7 emergency, aren't I calling 911?
Most likely.
I mean, if it's 2 a.m., I don't call, my doctor's office because there's nobody there.
Yeah. Well, and like we've talked about so many times, these things have no bearing on any kind of access to care. So, you've got a woman who's had an emergency inside the clinic or back at home after she's home. You're going to call 911. You're not going to put her in the backseat of a car and drive her to the hospital because that's not safe. What happens if she has even more immediate crisis in the backseat of her car? Right. You want her to have medical treatment. You call 911, an ambulance comes, and the ambulance takes them to whatever hospital the ambulance wants to. The doctor actually at
probably
the clinic,
the closest one.
Yeah, the doctor at the clinic actually releases the patient to the ambulance driver.
Right.
So the clinic has no control. So, in a lot of these situations, you've got this. Actually, it was a situation in the closed clinic in Cincinnati. He had 3 backup doctors at one hospital, but actually there was a hospital that was closer. So it didn't really matter who his 3 backup doctors were because they were at a completely different hospital than this ambulance was going to take them to.
Right.
And the person still got care. The person was still fine. It's bureaucratic, like we talked about before. It's bureaucratic red tape.
Yeah.
So, we've talked to the folks and, they're finding a 3rd doctor. They're going to reapply. They've got 30 days to reapply. So it's not like the clinic is closing tomorrow. And they, two expect to be able to, meet these new regulations of the 3rd doctor and reapply for a variance.
So this 2 doctors isn't enough. That was the only reason they gave.
That was the only reason they gave in the letter. Yes. So they should be able to.
And this is for the facility in Dayton.
Yeah. To the last clinic in Dayton.
Okay.
The Women's Med Center of Dayton. So hopefully they'll be able to reapply and.
Just the one they refer to as Sharonville.
No, Sharonville was the Cincinnati clinic that closed.
Okay. So this is his Dayton
location. It's actually in Kettering, as a matter of fact. Pay Laner's hometown.
Cute.
Explains a lot. So hopefully we'll be able to reapply there. But, now we've got the 60-day thing. They waited almost 3 years for their last one. If they reapply and they get 60 days, then, they're kind of screwed because if ODH waits 3 years again, they automatically get denied in 60 days and they're forced to immediately close, unlike what's been happening now where, they're passing their inspections.
How can that be a law?
Yeah, the lawyers we've talked to, actually every lawyer I talked to, as soon as I said what that was, they're like, that's not constitutional. There's no way. That's a violation of due process. So hopefully it's something that can be challenged in court if somebody ever is denied for those purposes.
Our lawyers told you that?
Yes.
When they write laws, don't they have lawyers read them?
You would think. Actually, yes, there's a whole bunch of lawyers that actually write the laws. If they're down in LSC that write them all.
So wouldn't one of their lawyers said, hey, this apparently is obviously unconstitutional?
You would think. But, LSC also writes the heartbeat bill, which is wildly unconstitutional. So obviously they can point out whatever they want to the bill sponsor, but the person who wants the thing in it can say, I don't care, write it anyway.
Didn't anyone in the committee process say, hey, this is unconstitutional?
No, because it really didn't have a committee process.
That's right. This is the back door.
Yes.
So
through the back door.
Nobody had a chance to point those out because we didn't want to hear that this was unconstitutional. Right. So that, we'll see what happens in Dayton. And then we had really actually great news, very surprising and great news out of Cuyahoga Falls. Dr. Burkons has been trying to reopen the Northeast Ohio Women's Center in Cuyahoga Falls. He's now applied for a license a couple of times. Very uncharacteristically, ODH didn't follow their usual protocols. The first time he applied, he had a couple of things that they found on his inspection. Very minor things like you don't have a battery backup. Well, I can go down to the hardware store and get a battery backup in 5 minutes.
Right.
That's fine. It was those kinds of things. He actually had them all corrected within 24 hours.
Okay.
But instead of allowing him to correct that and coming in and re-inspecting, which is what ODH does every other time, because of the violations, he was denied his license the first time. So every other ambulatory surgical facility who has applied and had violations, and many of them do, they're all given 10 days to fix them. They're re-inspected and they're granted their license when they fix them. They did not do that with him. They just denied his application and forced him to reapply. So he did. He reapplied for his license again. He passed the inspection with nothing wrong. They went over it with a fine-tooth comb and found absolutely nothing.
I bet that's like the finest toothed comb.
Oh, I'm sure.
Ever.
Because they are under firm instructions, I'm sure, to try to find anything they possibly can in those facilities. They found absolutely nothing, and it still took over 3 months. We have data that shows that it usually, when a clinic has a completely clean inspection report, it takes 2 weeks, between 2 and 4 weeks, to get the license, the piece of paper that says that you're allowed to operate.
I would think after you've done the inspection, if you didn't find anything wrong, the paperwork that follows, it's got to be really easy.
It's actually,
did you find anything wrong? No.
No.
Okay, move on.
Yeah. Well, it actually is really, really easy. We found this out with the Haskell Clinic in Cincinnati, part of the lawsuit that when they were trying to stay open before the judge agreed with ODH and they were forced to close in Sharonville. They actually got a letter from ODH approving their variance and approving their clinic license. And that was all done because there's a checkbox in the system at the Department of Health that the employee clicks the checkbox and these things are automatically produced.
It took them 3 months to check a box?
Yes.
Right.
So something was going on there. And the doctor who is in charge of the clinic called repeatedly, and all he got was, your application is currently under review. And he's like, by who? Who can I call to see? Well, we don't know.
They don't know? What do you mean they don't know?
More like, we don't want to tell you.
Right.
So finally, after over 3 months of waiting, passing the inspection with flying colors, we finally learned on Friday that the license status on the website had changed.
Okay.
And we were all very surprised by that. It changed from pending to active. Cool. And
active means approved.
Approved.
Hey.
Yeah. And then because I'm a constant skeptic, I was like, don't do anything until you get a piece of paper. Because I'm sure that changing that word on the website is really, really easy to do.
Right.
But so I checked back in.
Apparently not, because checking boxes takes months.
Yeah, it does. So, obviously
undoing
it's really
that could take years.
So no, I checked in with him on Tuesday. He actually got the piece of paper license in the mail on Monday.
So we have a new facility.
Yeah. So we last week went from 8 abortion clinics in Ohio to 9 abortion clinics in Ohio. So,
but this one's in Cleveland.
Akron,
Cuyahoga
Falls. So right outside of Akron.
Okay. So that still doesn't change our western half of the state.
Yes.
No.
We'll see how long
Western
this
half of
lasts.
the
But it is
Still.
one more provider for women.
Yes,
Yes.
one more provider, one more place to go. And we know that people are having to wait long times for appointments because we've lost half the clinics in the state.
Right.
So it's a good thing that there's
Good.
one more that's open again. So another good thing that happened.
Okay. What are we talking about next? We're talking about the 20-week ban, which was passed by the Senate Health Committee, and then and full Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So that one went through the Senate committee. That was 2 weeks ago. A week ago.
Yeah, it feels like 2 weeks ago, but yeah, it was
So much has happened.
Yes,
Yeah.
today actually that the Senate passed it. No, a week ago yesterday that the
A
Senate
week ago yesterday. Okay. So the committee, they kind of rushed that one through. That didn't have that many hearings.
Yeah, they met twice in 1 week to get the third hearing in so they could rush the bill through.
Right. Twice in 1 week. So they heard testimony from clergy, 4 clergy members,
Yep.
all of whom were in support of abortion rights. They were opponents of the bill.
Yeah,
Yes.
part of RCRC.
People who were testifying from a religious aspect said that this, was was it violated women's ability to discuss abortion options with their faith provider and their family and their doctor, and not have political interference. So they heard from clergy. They heard from a medical student from Ohio State.
Yeah, she was awesome.
They heard from a patient who shared an experience of
very personal story.
Very personal story. Her name was Marla. You can find her story on her blog, describing what had happened when she had a wanted pregnancy that didn't work out. And this was another, so many moments of disappointment. She stood up there and she told this story. It takes some bravery to share these stories out loud. She did a terrific job, and concluded her story, and they were like, okay, thanks. Any questions? Nope. Have a seat. And that was it.
Yeah. And like every other time, every time somebody else, because it's the health committee. We talk about a lot of serious conditions in that committee. And there are a lot of tearful family stories about somebody getting some rare disease. And
these are hard experiences.
Yeah. There are tears in that committee, pretty much every committee hearing.
Right.
And every single time somebody comes up with one of those tearful stories, there's at least one or two people on that committee who don't even ask a question, but they're like, thank you so much for coming and sharing that story. I know it's really difficult and hard to do these kinds of things, but it's really good that we heard from you today.
Right.
And she got none of that because she was telling a narrative that the chairwoman of the committee, Senator Shannon Jones, and Vice Chair Peggy Lehner, who talked about it.
Yeah.
Peggy Lehner, former head of Right to Life,
and
Ohio
the sponsor of the 20-week ban.
Right.
They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear the stories from the women that they're screwing over.
Because they're saying that narrative doesn't exist.
Yeah.
They're saying that only the women who is an unwanted pregnancy and they just waited until it was at
Too
this
late.
point want to have an abortion, which is like the exact opposite of the case. Like most of those, like you said, are wanted pregnancies, but then again, no, you're not going with my narrative.
Or we
I
couldn't
don't want that.
Or we couldn't get to the clinic twice, or I didn't have the
Exactly.
money. All these other things that they've put in place are the
Right.
reasons why these women are seeking abortion.
Yeah.
This seems to be like the biggest case of double speak.
Yeah.
Where they're saying that these aren't due to medical complications as much as we believe.
Mm-hmm.
They're only 2% of abortion cases. And so, because they're so rare, we kind of have a better understanding of what these are. And it's women who are, often have wanted pregnancies, facing horrible complications. And they've made the decision that based on the medical advice that they're getting from their chosen doctor, that it's in, everybody's best interest, including their pregnancies, to terminate the pregnancy, to get an abortion. They don't want an abortion, but that's what's best for them.
Yeah. Because she already had children.
Right. Yeah. That woman did,
Yeah.
And she had to travel out of state with our current laws in place. She had to go to Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Right.
So, again, these are women who were forcing out of state. As our executive director likes to say over and over again, Ohio is a medical destination state. The Ohio State University Medical Center is one of the best medical centers in the world.
Right.
The Cleveland Clinic, people come from all over the world to go to the Cleveland Clinic.
Right.
And here we are in Ohio forcing women to go out of state for the medical care that they need. And that's just completely unacceptable. But it was obvious, from that and from, my testimony was probably some of the most scathing that we've given in that building. And
which also got no questions.
Yeah, which also
like,
got
really no questions.
Yeah, and I actually purposely went that day and kind of purposely poked them a little bit so that they would come after me and leave all of our other people alone because I'm the person who's used to this. I get paid to get beat up by the legislature, and it's what I do on a daily basis. I didn't need our medical student who was doing this for the very first time and. Amazingly not as nervous as I think I would have been in that situation.
Yeah.
But she was calm as a cucumber. She was awesome. But, we kind of figured that their plan was to zoom this through as quickly as possible.
Yeah, this is all a formality. You guys can come up here and say what you're going to say, but we're going to vote it in anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
They weren't paying attention at all to my testimony.
Not at all.
I was watching them as I was giving them, and they were all talking to each other. I don't think they heard a word that I said. So
yeah.
And then the clergy got up. The clergy got a ton of questions.
Oh, yeah. Especially my favorite was Senator Gardner.
Like, this isn't a really religious bill, but here you're asking all these questions for clergy. You had a medical student, an expert witness on, on abortion policy, and somebody who's experienced this firsthand. You have no questions for these people. But let's stand here and talk about how a certain church feels this way or the other, which,
because that's what they care about.
That was all the questions.
They don't care about what we think, what women think, what the experts think. It's like the guy I met at Confess. I told you, there's pro-choice churches out here. What? That's all they care about. They're just like, what's going on there?
Well, it was funny because Senator Gardner, a Republican on the committee, the first two of the ministers were Methodist ministers. One was Episcopal and the other was non-denominational. Mm-hmm. And the first minister that went was Methodist, and he's Methodist. He joined a Methodist church, I think he said, a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. So he was baptized into the church very recently. And he had no idea that this was the official stance of the Methodist church. And it was almost like this, wait, what? The church I go to believes in this? What? That's not okay. That's not what my church believes. No. You must be wrong. I mean, that was really how he came to those questions. It was really kind of
it's obvious though he's not used to doing any research.
No, obviously not, because it's a very solid part of the Methodist, what we believe doctrine is that we believe that women should be able to make these decisions. Right. So it was, the clergy got a lot of questions, and I think it was because it went against the narrative that they think of, especially the Episcopal priest, because he came in full collar. And I really think that they were assuming he was a Catholic priest coming up to testify for the bill. And when he came up,
when I saw him, I was like, oh, okay.
When he came up as an Episcopal priest,
and he stands up and knocks it out of the park, I was like, oh.
Yeah. His testimony was pretty darn amazing.
Yes, it was.
So and he got a lot of questions as well, and it continued. I mean, all of the ministers did an amazing job kind of coming back at the questions that they were asked, because it is their belief and their belief system, and they have the moral authority to do that, which is why it was so amazing that they came out and testified. Thanks to the Ohio Religious Coalition for coordinating that, because it was pretty amazing.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then there was another thing of note during the committee for the 20-week ban. State Senator Capri Cafaro of Ashtabula, way up there in the corner of Northeast Ohio. Mm-hmm. She shared something that we'd never heard from her before.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And so kind of following in the footsteps of Senator Fetter, Representative Fetter, I always call her Senator. She was Senator when I started this job. So Senator blazed in my head. But Representative Fetter on the floor of the House, when they passed the heartbeat bill, told her personal story of abortion after a sexual assault in the military. And kind of in that vein of personal storytelling, Capri Cafaro had enough in the 20-week ban hearing. She had asked a question to a witness supporting the bill about how, sometimes post 20-week abortions are done not necessarily because the woman is about to die, but to preserve her future fertility. In some cases it's, have an abortion now, or you could be facing a hysterectomy later on, right, that, could stop you from ever having another child. And she asked the witness about this, and it was a radiologist. So it wasn't even like an OBGYN who delivers babies and deals with this. It was a radiologist. So this radiologist like, no, I've never seen that before. So kind of picking up on that, Senator Lehner asked the next person the same question, and there was the same answer. No, I've never seen that before. But Senator Lehner said it in a very kind of patronizing, isn't this just ridiculous notion kind of way. And I think Senator Cafaro had enough at that point, and she actually challenged her colleague right back and said, you know what, like these situations that I'm talking about, that could be me. And she told her personal story of her medical condition that she has. I guess she's got several non-cancerous benign tumors in her uterus that cannot be removed. Wow. And it could very well impact her ability to get pregnant. And once she got pregnant, things could happen in that pregnancy such that if she, didn't terminate this pregnancy, she could never have another one again. And this one might end early anyway because of, and before the fetus is viable anyway. So right. She wouldn't get a child out of that pregnancy, and it would stop her from ever getting pregnant ever again. And she, shared this very personal, very medical, something that nobody should ever have to talk about on the floor. Nobody should be talking about their personal medical history, in any side of legislative hearing. And so, you
because
know,
hopefully legislation's not violating your
Yeah,
personal
exactly.
medical rights.
exactly. But she, you know, she
And-
stood up and she said it.
Yeah, a lot of women deal with that. My mom dealt with the same thing. She had to have a hysterectomy when she was 42 because she had benign tumor in her uterus. And that's actually something that I don't know why, but genetically, a lot of African American women deal with that, like endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And you know, my own sister, my cousin recently had to have part of hers removed. She already had 2 kids, so but they saw precancerous cells, so she had to do it. My sister has to have a pap smear every 2 to 3 months because they found precancerous cells in her cervix. So yeah, that just for them to be like, oh, this is just something that's so crazy and doesn't happen. And these bills that, you know, disproportionately affect low income and Black women, minority women. And that's actually something, yes, you know, physiologically, they're more predisposed to this gynecological condition. That's really ridiculous.
Yeah. And it just, again, proves that if it doesn't fit their narrative, they don't care. Because I checked in with her later. I was like, did anybody come up after you? And we'll, you know, say, you know, hey, thanks for sharing your story. Or anything. No, nobody came up to like apologize for being ridiculous or anything else. They just completely ignored that she had done that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we didn't ignore it. And because of, you know, that bravery and everything in that committee, Senator Cafaro gets that's what she said this week.
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
Okay. Good job, Senator Cafaro.
Yes.
Okay. So then in addition to the 20-week ban, we also saw the Down syndrome ban be passed
In committee.
Yep, in committee. This is the House bill in the Community and Family
Advancement.
Advancement.
Where they do absolutely nothing to advance communities or families, but whatever.
Right. Or you know, actually improve healthcare policy, which used to be handled by the Health Committee. So this was passed by the House Committee, the same committee that we saw the heartbeat bill passed in. We haven't seen this move to the floor yet. It's still part of Ohio Right to Life's big agenda that they rolled out early on in this year. So we haven't seen the last of this.
It'll come back this fall. The legislature, thankfully, goes home for a couple of months now. And so it'll be quiet for a little bit, but we'll see it again in the fall, I'm sure.
Everybody who complains about teachers getting the summer off needs to see the schedule for their state legislature.
Yes, exactly. Because they get it off too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that state legislatures make a tiny bit more money than teachers, but we'll leave it at that.
A little bit.
A couple weeks for spring break, all of the summer off.
They'll probably take a lot of the fall off because the Republican debates and convention and everything. And
it's even more time in the fall off if it's an election year.
So but you know what? I'm totally fine with the legislature just going away and never coming back.
They are allowed to be out of the building.
They can take as many recesses as they want.
Yeah. I mean, they're not doing anything productive. So
okay, so that wraps up what we've seen in the State House in the month of June. That was plenty. What's happening in July? What's coming up?
Well, surprise, surprise, another Republican is putting in their hat for president.
Another one?
It's John Kasich.
What? It's another white man. Yay!
Another white guy running for the Republican nomination. I know, right?
Shocker.
Yeah, so he's supposed to announce actually July 21st is the date which I always think about, like, why did they isn't it supposed to be a big thing and like a surprise and like you lose the element of surprise and like people actually, I mean, not that anybody
they've announced the announcement.
They like, why do you do that?
I wonder if beforehand they announced that they were going to announce the announcement.
Probably, but they've all done that. They're like, on this date he's going to announce. I'm like, then why don't you just announce now? You already told us, like, okay,
it's too
why don't
far
you just
away.
say on this day he's going to give a speech? Like,
I'm going to make a big sign that's just the dictionary definition of announcing.
Yes, exactly. We know now you're running for president. I mean, we already knew that. You're announcing your announcement. You're not going to get anywhere. You have no name recognition. You're polling behind everyone. I think the last poll he got like 1.6%. Yeah, you're not going to go anywhere, John Kasich.
You're
which is,
horrible for women, John Casey.
you're
exactly.
horrible for women. When the RNC gets here to Cleveland, we're going to make sure to let everyone know, not just about you, of course. We're going to let everybody know about all of them. Chris Christie just announced, which I'm kind of surprised he did, because he has, what did it say? His disapproval rate, I believe now is at
higher than his approval. Yeah,
it's higher. It's still like at 55%, I think. Yeah, because, and it's kind of weird because people are like, oh, he's going to be the anti-Romney and he'll be like somebody who's going to get them. It's like, first of all, but okay, so see, the American people, sometimes we really have to step back and think about things. Exactly. These people, John Kasich, Chris Christie, Bobby Jindal, Jeb Bush, his brother who was president for 2 terms, his father who was president for a term. They have they coined that term compassionate conservative. And so you think about these guys like John Kasich, guys like Chris Christie, and it's like, okay, there's something about those guys. I want to have a beer with that guy. I want to hang out with that guy. And then for some reason, that all of a sudden makes you qualified to be president. That all of a sudden makes people, but that's the thing though, because those people like that have won because people are not thinking about, okay, what is this person going to do on education, on jobs, on foreign policy, on the environment? And they really just think about, oh, well, he seems like a nice guy, which, I get it. I've worked on a lot of electoral campaigns, consulted on them. Yes, you have to have a good personality. People have to like you. You can't be a weirdo. But at the same time, it's kind of like, look at their policies.
Oh, there's some weirdos.
Well, the weirdos aren't going to win.
Well, no, the weirdos aren't going to win.
Hopefully, at least.
No, they'll just beg for really good TV. But people don't. It's really frustrating because people don't go back and look at their actual policies and the stuff that they've actually done in their own states to make, the job growth in New Jersey, it's not going well. Their pensions, the unions, he's like gutted them. All the things he's done, but all of a sudden, he's such a nice guy, and look at that boisterous personality. Like, who cares? He's a terrible person.
I love how you bleep yourself out.
He's not a terrible person. Don't let me say that. He makes, because we don't want any ad hominem attacks because that doesn't help anything. They have terrible policies. They're not terrible people. I just vehemently disagree with their policies and the way that they do things. And people should just think about that. It doesn't matter. I really don't. I want you to be smarter than me as a president. You should be smarter than me.
Yes.
I mean, I don't want you to be on my level because guess what? I'm not qualified to be president. So people should think about that when they're thinking about how they're going to vote for these people. And I'll get off my soapbox now. But that's one thing that John Kasich has going for him. He has that, good old boy, nice personality, whatever. But you have terrible policies. You haven't helped anything. The job growth here is terrible. You've cut funding for schools. You've made more abortion restrictions. You've allowed fracking. You're not doing anything for the environment. Like, those are not good things. And it doesn't matter about their personality or if they did this funny thing, made you laugh. Like,
think about it.
Yes.
Like Ted Cruz's BuzzFeed thing about how he wants to be a character on The Simpsons.
Oh, I didn't see that.
You didn't see that one? Yeah, it might be actually what he's qualified for. So maybe he should just continue going with that one, a Simpsons character, because I think he fits much better in that fictional world of The Simpsons than he does in the real world.
They're all qualified for Simpsons.
Yes. But I think also, on the Kasich stuff, like if you're going to run for president, how can you be scared to face 30 people in the hallway? I mean, you're gonna stand up to Putin or you're gonna stand up to Kim Jong-un, but you can't face 30 Planned Parenthood and NARAL supporters in the hallway before you sign a budget bill. You've got to sneak in and out of the back door.
Chris Christie would have walked out in the hallway.
Oh yeah, Chris Christie would have totally walked out in the hallway.
He probably cursed us out.
He would have.
Yeah.
You know what? He would have showed his face.
That,
Yeah.
I would respect that. If you actually came to me and told me what you think, I'm still not going to agree with you and you're terrible at your job. But at least you stand up and I can respect you. Like John Kasich can't even get any respect.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So how he's gonna run for president, how he's gonna be president.
I think that brings up a question that I've always had about John Kasich, and I've got my own opinion. He didn't face the people in the hallway.
Mhm.
2 dozen young women.
Yeah.
Being watched over by
about 4 or 5 state troopers.
Yes.
Yeah, and the
Exactly.
media.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Like we're gonna do something.
Right. Nothing was. This is the safest environment he's got. Everybody, was searched as they came in the building.
Yes.
He's got the highway patrol. He can't even, show his face.
Yeah.
It was a glass door. He could have stood there and waved at us.
Yeah.
Did not show his face at all.
Mhm.
And so I guess there's 2 questions here.
Mhm.
One is an extension of that. If he can't face these women, who is it that he can stand up to?
Mhm.
Because he's doing the work of Right to Life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is if he needs to tell his own people, no, I can't, I can't continue to carry your water.
Mhm.
How is he qualified to lead something like this country? And then, the bigger question that I have about him is, do you think that he really cares about these issues? I mean, this is the second budget of abortion restrictions. And in between, he signed a ton of other abortion bans.
The most of any governor in Ohio history.
Right. So, I mean, he's rubber stamping these things right and left. Do you think he wants to?
I really don't think so. And I think that's why we see them in the budget.
Right.
Because he can kind of hide. Because, we really haven't. He actually hasn't signed a standalone bill since the last budget. He signed a bunch of them in his first term, like right after he got in 2011. He signed a late term ban and an insurance ban and all the screwing minors over.
Yep.
There were like 4 or 5 bills he passed in 2011. And then we saw nothing else until the budget.
Right.
And he snuck all that crap in the budget. And then we haven't seen him have to sign anything else since then. And I think that that's what's happening is that he can hide behind this budget in the same kind of way. Go back in the back door. It's not my fault. Somebody else put it in the budget.
Because these aren't things he's proud of.
No.
It's the worst kind of hiding, though.
Yeah,
it really
is. He needs a consultant. It's the worst kind of hiding because we still all know about it. It was reported on in every newspaper here in Ohio.
And we will make sure everyone else knows about it.
Exactly. So it's like, it's not a standalone bill, but you still voted it. You didn't line on and veto it. Right. And everybody still knows. And everybody knows you did it because you wanted to sneak it in.
Yeah.
So it's like, he's doing it because he doesn't want to do the standalone bill, but still everybody knows. So it's like, it's even worse. It's the worst kind. Like, why do you do it that way?
And every time he's asked by reporters, why did you approve this bill? Why didn't you veto these bills? His talking point is always the same. It's, well, first off, I'm pro-life. And then his second thing they'll say is that, these are the things that the people have given me, as if the legislature's really representing the people. Okay. Yeah. So, he gives I'm just pro-life talking point.
Yeah. Like, oh,
but there's no, I mean, it's hilarious. Actually, it's on our YouTube and maybe we can pop it up so it shows up a little bit better on YouTube. But we had a supporter at a town hall meeting right before he signed the last budget in the session into law, ask him about the pieces that were in that bill. And like, man, I think he would have, I was actually afraid he was going to fall off the back of the stage because as soon as she asked him the question about it, he gave that same, well, I'm pro-life and we're looking into it kind of response. Right. But as he did it, he was walking backwards away from her. Like if he could have walked off that stage, I think he would have. I was seriously afraid he was going to fall off the back of it.
Yeah.
And he didn't actually start moving forward again until he started talking about something else.
Right.
And so like, it's obvious that like his heart and mind are not behind this. So he's a total puppet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which just goes back into it.
That's even worse. Yeah. Like, at least, like you said, have some respect or principle about yourself instead of just being like you said, oh, well, I'm pro-life, so this is what we gotta do.
And he likes to pretend he's not, because like when you compare him to like Huckabee, I mean, Huckabee wears this stuff out there. I mean,
Huckabee brings the abortion restrictions into the front door.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I want to sign this. I want to do this. I'm going to pass.
Ted Cruz takes him through the front door. Bobby Jindal takes it to the front door.
Yeah.
All of these guys, they brag about these things because you get the feeling that, well, they're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They believe in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get that feeling out of Kasich.
He's really a backdoor. And it was the same thing on marriage equality, where his talking point that he said at least twice was, oh, I'm disappointed.
Like, no,
Not I'm horribly
Sort of,
offended
kinda.
because this isn't what I believe.
Yeah.
It was just, well, this is,
Disappointing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we're going to follow the law.
Yeah.
You
But I'm
know.
disappointed.
I'm a puppet for Christian conservatives, and they're angry at this, so I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he believes in these. I think he's just doing the bidding of the people that provide him with campaign contributions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which leads us into everything else that happened in the last couple of weeks with the Supreme
Yes.
Court, because the end of
Yay.
June the budget gets signed and the Supreme Court releases every single one of their cases. that
Oh,
were-
I just spoiled it.
big-
Maybe people didn't hear about the marriage equality ruling.
if
If
you've
you
been
missed
living under a
it.
rock. Yeah, BFD. Yeah, they okay, so a lot of stuff happened with the Supreme Court this year.
Understatement of the year.
Exactly, understatement. So to kick it off, the ACA, so the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, as it will forever be known. And now
Thanks,
I thank you, Obama. I saw an article the other day that said he is officially one of the most influential presidents in American history because he brought universal health care. And so it's basically, I will give you my, ACA for Dummies Cliff Notes on what the case was about. Basically, when the ACA was enacted, different states had the option to open their own exchanges. There's the federal exchange, and then there's the state exchanges. And a lot of the states, mostly red states, did not, make their own exchange. So you would have to get on the federal exchange. And so the case was that if you are not on an actual state exchange, are you still eligible for the subsidies to help you pay for your health care? And so they're basically trying to determine what the words, the state are funded are. What were the exact words? Part of I don't know, something about the states. They're basically the state exchange, basically trying to determine if this means like actual states or just state of the union. So basically they upheld that whether you're on the federal exchange or if you're on your state exchange, you are still eligible for the subsidies. If they hadn't said that, then a lot of people who were getting the tax subsidies to be able to afford it would no longer be able to afford their health insurance anymore, and millions of people would have been kicked off of it. But the Supreme Court luckily upheld that. So the ACA, and it's been around now. You don't think about it. It's been around now for 5 years.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
How long we've been fighting this.
Yes, it's been around
awesome.
for 5 years. Millions of people are on it now. Millions of people have health care. We're now at the point as well, if you had a pre-existing condition, you can get insurance. So it's working. And so a lot of people are very happy about that. And so that's something that the Supreme Court upheld. And so I was
in a
really happy
6-3 decision. It wasn't even a split court. It was 6-3. It wasn't 5-4. So that was even more impressive. So.
The Supreme Court said, duh.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Who were the three who voted against it?
Oh,
I can
You know
probably
the
guess. I
three.
only need one. Okay. Was Roberts part of that?
No, he was the sixth. So it was the
Yeah.
three. It was Scalia, Thomas,
and Alito.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Because
You knew which
that's why the Supreme Court is important, people. That's why it's gonna this election is gonna put up some new justices. Not to get off into those waters, but Supreme Court new
Elections
presidents.
matter.
Elections matter. They're gonna have the new nominations. Another thing that they another case that they heard, you probably heard about, the case in Oklahoma. It was also another case in California, and I forget the other state. But anyway, so there was an inmate who was on a death row inmate, and they tried to kill him using lethal injection. And the name of the medication was Midazolam.
Something like that.
The name of the medication, Midazolam, Midazolm, Midazolam. And so that medication, which technically the medication is not, that's not what kills you. It's just supposed to relax you, put you to sleep. It's like in the same body of whatever. I don't take those drugs. So whatever puts you to sleep, supposed to relax you.
Anesthetics,
exactly. I just drink wine. So but the people in the room who saw it, in one of the cases, the people said they saw the guy gag over 600 times.
Yeah.
The whole thing took 2 hours. He still didn't die. They were just in the room with him for 2 hours, watching him writhe and gag in pain for over 2 hours. And I say, when I really wanted to discuss this ruling, this is probably one issue, one of the very few issues that I am in the mushy middle on. I am not necessarily against the death penalty, only probably on the fiscal side of it, only because, it takes a lot of money to take care of prisoners,
Actually, it costs more money to kill them.
It does cost more money to kill.
Because we have to defend them. All the appeals, all the cases, they're in prison for so long. And so all the appeals and all the lawyers and everything else, it actually costs more to execute a prisoner than it does to keep them in there.
Okay, because I was like, why should we keep them in jail for so long? Just kill them. But okay, so never mind. It's cheaper to keep her. That's what they say,
That's what they say.
Cheaper to keep her. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so in this case, they ruled 5-4 that using this drug that did not work was constitutional. So Alito wrote what's the word for it?
Majority opinion.
Yes, he wrote the majority opinion, and basically saying that it's not cruel and unusual. It's not unconstitutional. That the death penalty is not unconstitutional. Therefore, whatever method is available to the state at that time cannot be unconstitutional. That reasoning,
most circular argument I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's very weird reasoning. And Sonia Sotomayor actually read her dissent. She was against it, saying that that first of all, that just whatever is available to the states doesn't mean that is constitutional. I mean, we're not, using a firing squad. We're not drawing and quartering people. Those things constitute cruel and unusual punishment. And we've decided that, while it may be, which is still murky, while it may be constitutional to kill people, it's not constitutional to torture them and have them writhing in pain for over 2 hours before they are deceased. But yeah, that was upheld. States can still use this drug that doesn't work to execute prisoners. And crazy. Yeah, but Google it if you don't know about this death penalty. It's really crazy.
Yeah, that was definitely a dark moment in the courts and all the other good stuff. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the marriage equality case. Marriage is legal and
is that why everybody was advertising Skittles in their Facebook profile picture? Which I do not endorse because they switched from lime to green apple. Bring back the lime.
Okay.
Skittles.
Yeah, I like lime Skittles. Anyway.
Tough. Because that's not a thing anymore. I'm pissed.
Damn
so
it.
Yeah, so
thanks,
marriage
Obama.
Equality.
Thanks, Obama. No more lime Skittles.
No more lime Skittles bad. Marriage equality good.
Yes. Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, okay.
And it's interesting because most people are on board. Actually, but then I actually saw something from Why Marriage Matters on Facebook yesterday that only 87 of our 88 counties are complying. I guess Belmont County is the holdout.
Belmont Crawford initially was.
Yeah, so it sounds like one of our
Belmont
counties
County?
is being in the middle of nowhere along the highway. So it seems like most of our courts, actually, most
and all
of our
that
big
should take
cities,
is just somebody going to the court and the judge will be like, duh.
Yeah. Well, actually, they the courts in Ohio actually issued a ruling that sent out to everybody where any of these like birth certificates or marriage certificates, death certificates, where it says wife, husband should just be until they can reprint paper.
Party
one, party two, spouse one, spouse two.
Yeah.
So that's how they've all handled it, and it seems like they've all handled it fairly well here in Ohio. Of course, Alabama's fighting it tooth and nail. There was another I heard this morning on the way in.
AG.
the Texas AG was being ridiculous about it.
Yeah.
But it's the law of the land. Everybody and everybody who was married in, Ohio people that went to New York or those places and got married and have a marriage certificate from that state is now valid. They now have a valid marriage certificate in Ohio, which is awesome and amazing. So that was a great thing that happened. Of course, that's not the be all end all. In many, many states, including Ohio, a person can get married on Sunday and get fired for getting married on Monday. So, there is still a lot of work to be done in the state. And I was happy to see a lot of the national groups like the National Gay Lesbian Task Force say that on decision day, that this is an awesome day, but we still have a long way to go. We're still seeing murder rates for minority trans, especially trans women, insane levels. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we can celebrate for now and get right back to work on that, because we know what's going to happen. I mean, when we saw it with the Roe decision, Roe was decided in 1973. The Hyde Amendment was, that cut off Medicaid funding for abortion, was passed in 1974, like a year later. So, I think that hopefully we're in a much better place to kind of defend against those backtracking and backsliding with this. And then in other news, actually, there have been a lot of these. You can look them up online, because I've actually lost track of how many stays there have been recently. The Texas House Bill 2 case that is being pushed onto the Supreme Court. Supreme Court gave them a stay so that all their clinics can stay open until the Supreme Court rules on their case.
This is in Texas.
Yeah, so the Texas case that was going to close all but 7, I think, clinics in their state is now being stayed. So those other clinics
by the Texas Supreme Court?
No, the U.S. Supreme Court.
The U.S. Supreme Court.
They've gone through their circuit court, and now they're all the way up at the Supreme Court level. So the court will hear their case next year.
And so these are, what sort of restrictions are these?
These are their TRAP laws, or targeted restrictions on abortion providers. Texas, unlike Ohio, didn't have the ambulatory surgical requirements that Ohio has. So they were requiring clinics to meet those ambulatory surgical facility levels, and that would close all but, I think, 6 or 7 of the clinics in the state, because they couldn't reach those levels. And their rules for ambulatory surgical facilities were like ridiculously insane, like hallway width and those kinds of things. I mean,
these are the sort of things that if you're going to perform like root canal, you need to have a hallway as wide as a hospital would to get a full-size gurney through. It's totally not necessary for your dentist who operates outside of a renovated old house. Which every dentist I've ever seen, for some reason, if you're a dentist, you like flop some old house and that becomes your dentist's office.
You're so true on that. I never thought about that, but you're so
and there's no hallway that a gurney fits down, because he's a dentist. That's an ambulatory surgical facility.
So there, Ohio has them, our abortion clinics classified as ambulatory surgical facilities, but other than our ridiculous transfer agreement laws, for the most part, they are actually attached to patient safety kind of things. You must have resuscitation equipment. They must be clean and sterile. You've got to have a sterilizer. You've got, those kinds of regulations, which are totally cool, because they those
are actually medically required.
Exactly. So Texas's were way worse than that, and were completely ridiculous. And so it's been stayed. We'll hear that case. Actually, we'll probably be talking about this next year at this time, with the end of June releases. Then
and hopefully with good news.
Yeah, hopefully with good news. Not gonna win. So there were a bunch of other like lower court rulings, staying a Florida waiting period law and a Kansas law, and a couple of other ones. Check them out. But there have been some really interesting news out of that. So that's the Supreme Court.
Okay. Quite a busy season for them.
It is.
We also didn't put on there, but also I'm sure you guys all know that there was a mass shooting in Charleston also since we last talked, and 9 churchgoers were killed at Mother Emanuel AME Church, which was one of the first churches established during slavery, because Black people, slaves, were not allowed to have organized religion. And so they met in private. This church has been burned multiple times over the past 100 years. And also one of the people killed was a state senator? State senator.
And the minister.
Clemente Pinckney. And he was also the minister, who was one of the 9 people killed at the church. It just like a really, really crazy thing. And so from that, a lot of people have been talking about, because the guy who did it, which we don't need to say his name, he's a terrible person, a terrible racist person who
he's a murderer.
Yes, a murderer, a domestic terrorist. And so there's been a lot of discussion as well, not only about race, but also about, a really huge debate about the Confederate flag and whether or not we should be taking them down, and whether or not, this is about heritage, which I'm from Georgia. So I see a lot of stuff on my Facebook feed, different opinions about it. And my whole thing is like, I definitely believe that we should take it down because it is a racist symbol. You cannot say it's not a racist symbol. So the swastika is outlawed in Germany because obvious reasons, and in Russia. And so the backup flag that they use, because they cannot get a flag with a swastika on it, is the Confederate flag. So to say,
are you kidding me?
This is truth. You can Google
that one.
it.
I had no clue on. That's nuts.
Yes, the swastika is banned there because of the Holocaust.
So
and
they
because
use
of
the
Hitler.
The Confederate States of America.
That's what Larry Wilmore in his show. The Confederate flag is so racist. that is what racists use as the backup
globally
flag
recognized
that they cannot
asshole flag.
Exactly. So you cannot say that it's about, heritage, and that's, some people might feel that way, that they don't have hate in their heart. But at the same time, that is a symbol of racism and oppression. And also you cannot get away from, but it is also truth that it was never the official flag of the Confederacy. It was a flag that Robert E. Lee wanted to use, who was from Virginia. And a lot of people talk about Robert E. Lee. He only got involved because Virginia succeeded and he was from Virginia, but he wasn't necessarily for slavery. But I say Robert E. Lee. I don't give a about Robert E. Lee. Like, who cares? He was still a part of it, Yeah. And at the same time, the Confederate flag started to make a comeback in the 1950s as part of what? Oh, I think they just wanted to change it back to the Confederate flag because it had
nothing to do with the civil rights movement, I'm sure. It was just out of the pureness of that.
Out of the blue, we're going to put the Confederate flag back up at these state capitals. No, it was put back up to let Black people know you need to stay in your place, and that segregation is the way to go. So to say that it's not a racist symbol is completely BS, and it should be taken down. But on another note that I was speaking with Kelly about, I think it should be taken down. I don't think that should even be a debate.
No.
My worry about the whole situation is that because the media has latched on so tight to the debate about the Confederate flag, is that we lose the discussion about all these other things.
Right.
Talking
they're hung
about,
up on the symbol.
Yeah, they're hung up on the symbol, but at the same time, that doesn't change the fact that Black people are twice as likely to be killed by the police. It doesn't change the fact that Black people are, we're disproportionately do not have access to health care, which the ACA has helped, but it's still the fact that we don't, that our schools are not as good, that the schools are just as segregated today as they were before Brown v. Board of Education. So to say that we're only going to talk about the Confederate flag and not talk about all these other things. And for instance, Governor Nikki Haley wanted the legislature to come back for a special session to go and take down the flag. It's like, first of all, why do you need a special session? Just take down the flag, which Bree Newsom did. If you haven't seen her, they made a little
Go girl.
Hero.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
That was really awesome. And the crazy thing, just on one note, the guy who was with her, which I can't remember his name right now, but anyway, there was a white guy who was with her in like this
construction
event. And when I saw him, I thought he was like an official who was trying to help her, who was there, who was like supposed to be getting her down for the police. Yeah. And I found out later, he was with her as an ally. White people, sometimes that's what you have to do as an ally. Get in there, be a good ally. But the thing is, kind of MHP was saying, that gave her some legitimacy because we saw it and thought that, there's a white guy in a vest. He must be legitimate. But he was actually helping her with her,
right.
So that was a really good thing. But not to get off topic, Nikki Haley wanted the legislature to come back in and talk about taking down the Confederate flag because they were taking a break from talking about things like we've been talking about here, the budget.
I don't get how the governor can't. I mean, it's the state house and she's the governor. Can't she just go do it?
Yeah, you would think so. But apparently they have to have like a 2/3 vote to be able to take it down.
Really?
Yeah, they have to have more than a majority vote to be able to decide to take down the flag, which is in and of itself crazy. But the thing I wanted to get into on that is that, okay, like you said, okay, you're going to take down the Confederate flag, but at the same time, how much do you want to bet that things that they put in their budget, their policies that are going to affect people, disproportionately low income and Black and brown people, is in the budget? It's like, don't talk about the Confederate flag. Let's talk about the policies you put in your budget that's going to affect me in a real, tangible way.
They're talking about the Dukes of Hazzard being taken off TV. That's what they're talking about today.
Which doesn't matter. Like, take it off. You can have Dukes of Hazzard. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, take Dukes of Hazzard. Like, let's talk about something that's actually going to help people. Yes, help people in a real way. Help them to get jobs. Help them to get a good education. Help them to get access to healthcare. Help us to not have an infant mortality rate that's the worst in the country. Like, again, yes, I believe you should take down the Confederate flag. It's a racist symbol, but that is not. That's the whole thing when stuff like this happen, all these mass shootings, it's so easy to latch on to those little symbolic things because that takes no critical thinking. Oh, the Confederate flag, bad, let's take it down. But actually enacting policies and procedures that would make things more equitable, that takes too much critical thinking.
No, we can't do that. We just got to take the symbols down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with Obama. Like we were in this we elected a Black president, so we must be post-racial. We're all good.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not gonna, this doesn't work that way. That's not the way the world works.
One Black guy out of 44 becomes president, and all of a sudden we're in a post-racial society. Okay. Yeah.
Believe that? I got a bridge I can sell you.
Exactly. Yes. No. But yes, so again, a lot of stuff has happened, but that's a debate that's raging on. We'll see what happens. A lot of places I'm kind of surprised though, of a lot of the Mississippi, Alabama, that people were like, oh yes, let's take it down. I was quite surprised, anyway, that they were like for it. Because there was also, I told you, there was a recent parade to celebrate it 20 minutes from my hometown in Collin, Georgia, Dalton, Georgia, and they like ran into the back of each other, which I thought was funny. In their parade, there's a video of them running the trucks into each other. Yeah, out celebrating fabulous. The Confederate flag. But again, it's not about just the flag. It's about all the other underlying things that go into, why things are so why Black college graduates are less likely to find a job than white high school dropouts. I mean, those are things I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about a flag. I want to talk about real issues. But like, again, it's so easy for the media to pick up on that because it doesn't take any critical thinking. You can get a few sound bites and move on to the next tragedy.
Exactly.
On that note.
Yes.
This has been Randy's Rant.
So much to talk about. So much on our mind.
Last thing. New segment. The Title IX Sports Report. Which, even though we're not talking about Title IX sports, which for anybody who's been unaware, Title IX is it's the requirement that colleges, if they have any sports, they have to have women's sports.
There's actually, in general, they have programming, so it actually requires like childcare in schools and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So they have to treat female students the same as they treat male students in general. But it is mostly about sports. So yeah.
Right. So we're going to talk about women's sports.
Yay.
Is there any news in women's sports this week, Jaime?
I wouldn't know. But actually, in another hashtag Why Kasich sucks, he signed the budget as the U.S. played their semifinal game. So we all missed it. It was really sucky. Saw the 2 goals. They were fabulous and amazing. And woohoo! Go USA.
Women's World Cup soccer.
Yes, Women's World Cup soccer. They're in the final game. It's actually a repeat of the last Women's World Cup game. It'll be the U.S. versus Japan on Sunday at 5:00. be a fabulous game. Go USA. I know we can do it.
Yay.
You know, all the people who, you know, created the I believe we can win chant for the men's should now be screaming from the rooftop about the women, because we can't actually win this. The men did a fabulous job, but our women's soccer team has always, you know, been one of the best in the world, and they continue to be, and it will be awesome.
It's exciting to watch.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who says it's not, you know, they get their head up their ass.
Yeah.
Because women's soccer is a terrific sport.
It is.
You know, any sports fan needs to be watching this.
If you can watch 9 innings of the most boring sport in the world called baseball, you can watch women's soccer. And the number of people who come up to me and it's like, I love baseball, but women's soccer is so boring. I'm like, dude, like 3 people hit a ball in a baseball game and it lasts like 5 hours.
Yeah,
like, are you
like
kidding
watching
me?
paint dry.
Mm-hmm.
I saw my first soccer game in the flesh because Gabriel was fine to give me and Adam his tickets. And so we went and saw the Columbus Crew in person, and it was quite exciting. So I will be watching the women's soccer team. I still don't know some of the things that happens. You know, I don't know all the rules and everything like that. But
they kick the ball.
Yes, they kick the ball. They dribble. Yeah. So it was very exciting, though. I liked it.
And then, you know, the England versus Japan game, which I did actually get to watch last night, you know, ended on a very sour note for England, and my heart just I can't imagine the feeling.
What happened?
So it was 1-1. They each had gotten a penalty kick in the game. Both penalties actually were very questionable. The Japan one didn't actually happen in the box, and the England one was a complete flop from what it looked like. But each of them got a penalty kick. Both of them made the penalty kick. It was tied 1-1. They were in stoppage time, which means the extra time they add on to the end of the game, because the clock doesn't stop in soccer. And the English player was trying to get the ball back to her goalie, and she kicked it square up in the air. It hit the bottom of the top rail of the goal and bounced into the goal.
In Japan's goal?
And yes, and the English side of the where Japan would score. So
it was an own goal.
It was an own goal that lost Japan, that lost England the semifinals in the Women's World Cup. And this is like the farthest the English team has ever been in the World Cup. They kind of had a Cinderella ride. They shouldn't have beat France in the quarterfinals. Like, they've been playing really, really, really well. And to have that happen, and you could but it was really amazing, you know, just the team aspect of all of that, you know, like all of the players immediately, because of course this player was inconsolable. I can only imagine how she was feeling. And she'll be kicking herself for the rest of her life on that one. All of her teammates, like all of the words were completely of support. And, you know, she gave it her all. She's done everything for this team. You know, we're so proud of her and everything else. So it was nice to see them all rally around their fellow player. But Japan will advance, and we will play them in a rematch of the last one. Hopefully it goes better than last time, because we lost last time. So go USA.
Oh, we lost last time?
You lost last time. It was very, very sad.
Oh.
Right.
So, you know.
When is the game on?
5:00 Sunday.
Okay.
So watch it.
Okay. So
Woo-hoo.
happy Independence, everybody.
Yeah.
Go USA.
Happy 4th of July.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.